Okay, welcome everyone to the February 18th iteration of the MicroProfile live hangout. And by the way, am I breaking up at all? Because my video here is really slow.
It's good.
Okay, all right, just me then. Okay. Welcome to the February 18th iteration of the MicroProfile live hangout. A link to the meeting minutes is in the chat. Please click on that and add yourself as a MicroProfiler attendee. Meeting is being recorded and will eventually find its way to the YouTube channel, and it is everyone's shared responsibility to take notes. Okay, the things I was thinking about today. Uh, let's talk about component specifications, certifications, and listings. Okay, Ed's typing that one in. Let me see here. Okay, we'll go ahead and talk about that under general, if it's a short conversation. Then we'll talk about 7.1, the microprofile AI and lane chain for J, and a little bit about the tutorial just to get a status update. And I think that's mostly it for today. All right, so getting started. Ed, go ahead and ask your question here.
Yeah, so I got asked why isn't Peloton on the microprofile metrics 5.1 certified products page? And my first response was, well, because we certify Peloton as a microprofile compatible, we don't actually um, we don't actually submit CTRs for each of the component specifications. I went and looked through the bug history, and I wasn't really clear. I could find that the two products that were listed at one on that page. One of them is Open Liberty, and the other one is WebSphere. Um, anyway, so I guess I was just trying to figure out, do we want to encourage that in general, or do we want products to be listed on the component specification pages, or or what, what's the group want?
So here's my gut feel. Yes, we do. Because if people go to look at the spec page and they only see, one or two, it doesn't look, it's just not a good look. I would say either remove it, the spec page, or that section of the spec page altogether. Or, we do it in a more wholesome manner. I think if we pass the platform spec, then anything that's in the platform spec, the implementation should also be on the individual spec component pages, right? Because the way we do specs, there really isn't APIs in the platform spec level, right? It's a bunch of individual TCKs. So if you do a if you have a CCR for the um, platform spec, then you should, in my opinion, automatically be added the component specs. Now, metrics is a little bit different because it's no longer in the platform spec. So for
Yeah.
the standalone specs, we should maybe talk about that a little bit. But Emily, I don't know if you have thoughts. You're off mute.
Yes. So it's basically the kind of as you said, so it's the 5.1 is part of the micro profile. I think it's the 6.1. And basically it's kind of to make it kind of the across the board. So it's I'm thinking in basically is when you certify, for example, MicroProfile 7, the component spec, the relevant version component spec should be automatically also updated. So it's basically to say that also spec compliance as well.
It's a lot of work, right? If we want to make people, we want to make the component teams take care of that. I mean,
Uh,
yeah,
mm,
I don't mind it. I'm just I'm just offering that, that'll be a fair amount of work for people to keep track of, for whoever it is that approves the CCRs.
The CCR is basically is approved across the board. You don't need to basically read the kind of individual CCR. So the only
Right, no, the busy work is for the component spec teams to update these pages, right? Because I would submit a CCR for MicroProfile 6.1. In it would have the TCK results from all of the component specs that we passed. And I guess my question is, should the vendor assume that MicroProfile team will go in and salt that certification throughout all the component spec pages? Or should the vendor make some, should we have CCRs for each of the component specs? And then that's the thing that triggers these listings on these pages.
it's you shouldn't need to create an individual CCRs. So the only
So,
change is for the website, so to be updated. So
yeah, so
yeah.
that's so a CCR for MicroProfile 6.1 would probably fan out to, I don't know, 8 or 10 updates to each of these pages, right? So
Yes.
somebody
Yeah.
somebody in this group is going to sign up to do that.
Well, the way,
It's
sorry, I'm gonna step in here real quick. So Ryan is the one that kind of has been managing this. Well, he created these pages. Really, I think what we would like is for the spec teams. Um, well, we have to figure out how to load balance, to your point, manpower,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I'm
Yeah. I
exactly.
mean, fair question. So, it's currently a gap, I would say, and we should, like, I wouldn't want to put this necessarily on Ryan to do all these updates.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
Well,
no,
what's the re
compatible implementations don't necessarily happen all that often, right? So it's not like it's a um, huge manpower drain, but it is, to your point, we do have to figure out a process for managing it. Do we
there there
create?
are currently a whole bunch of compatible certifications in the backlog that are open, and each of those could, you know, I, obviously, I think some of this can be filtered, right? But
Hmm.
anyway, I think I get what you're saying. We want to have compatible products listed in the component specs. I think that's a good goal. I'm a little worried that it's a lot of work, going to be a lot of work on somebody, Ryan or whoever, he gets tag team with him. Um, and again, I'm looking for us to set what should the expectations be of a vendor, right? Like, there's a bunch of PyAra server um, uh, CCRs that are currently, listed with certification. Should those, should they expect that each of the TCKs that they passed, gets them updated on these component specs, right? So.
Yeah, I think Cesar, you had your hand up, but I suspect you were going to address this question about the backlog of PyAR, because we have talked about this in the past. But go ahead, Cesar.
Yeah, yeah, actually, I was gonna mention two things. The first one being that there is the process, and opening that PR is part of the process. But I recall being I recall being on a call that when Payara said that they automated that process, right? So if others are following or will follow the approach, uh, I think we need to think in a way that we can scale also at the same pace, and not have this eventual bottleneck if we depend only on Ryan to do the updates.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, there's wildfires in there. I'm sure there'll be another Helidon one sometime, right? I'm sure there'll be more Open Liberty, right? So,
yeah. I think, Cesar, as a part of that conversation, one thing that we talked about is that we don't have to submit an entry for every build of a product. That really, it's like as soon as you hit a compatible implementation for 7, let's say MicroProfile 7.1, right? Since it's coming out. Then you file a CCR for that, and it's kind of assumed additional builds of that version, compatible version of Pyara, um, are going to remain compatible, right? So as you go through minor releases or patch releases or whatever, that you don't have to resubmit CCRs, right? That the first one that you submit for a version, a Pyara version is sufficient. I thought that we had talked about that in one of the calls.
Yeah, I think Luis Luis mentioned that there's automation in Pyara that's automatically created.
I have no objection to that at all. It's just, but even still, right? If you just look at vendor major product name, there's probably, 5 or 10 products that could be salted through all of these specs, right? So maybe the backlog is hard and going forward, it won't be so hard, but it's, one CCR could generate quite a workload on whoever's keeping the site up to date.
Yeah.
So maybe should we take a stab at trying to establish what we think is going to happen? That when a vendor submits a CCR, if once it's approved, the website will be updated for the say platform, MicroProfile itself, plus all of the component specs that are certified. Do we want to?
Yeah, I think
Do we want to talk about it for
yeah.
a little bit first?
I think it's a process problem about how we go about doing it, which is going to be a combination of folks on this call, the marketing call, and the technical call, right? Because it kind of touches all three. So I well, I don't think we can solve it right here now. We can kick off the conversation on the Google group and try and bring everyone together there to discuss this. It's a good question.
I think
Go ahead, Emily.
I think it's kind of the when we have this website all the specification website design is the aim is to list the compatible implementations because for customers they might not interested in the overall kind of the component like release, they might be have a particular interest in one specification, for example, MicroProfile config. And then they log on to the config page and say, oh, which product are compatible? You say, okay, this kind of runtime, so they can choose from there. So I think it's I'm with Ed. So basically, it's the kind of the when I said to Ryan, I said for this component spec, basically whatever kind of implement a whole overall release, the compatible implementation should be they're automatically populated. You don't need extra CCRs. So again, I know it's a bottleneck on the kind of whoever maintains this website, but we did say for this website maintenance, we just took initial drive to have them created. So we have to discuss down the line about maintenance, like should have more people be able to update this kind of website or make it an automated process. I don't know how it will work. However, we have to have a discussion about sustainability.
So, for the Pyra folks, do you have a similar automated process on the Jakarta side where you submit CCNRs on the Jakarta side?
I have to talk with the guys about that because I have no idea, to be honest, if you have this kind of automation. But yeah, I will talk with them and I will give you the information about that.
Okay, because I'm just wondering how it's um, website aside, just how the folks reviewing the CCRs on the Jakarta side, resolve the frequent updates that PyR is generating. So
I would I'd like to try and treat that problem separate from, you know, what do we want? You know, let's just, I mean, okay, I guess they're related, but you know, I don't expect to be generating. We make a lot of Helidon releases, and I don't generate CCRs for each one of those.
right. Yeah, it was more of a learning question
Yeah.
to see if there was something that we could learn from.
Sure.
So that was the intent behind my question, just an FYI.
Okay,
So
so-
yeah, let's
So in Jakarta, we don't do this, right? We just the platform product gets, you know, if they want to be listed, they, you know, they do a separate, they have to do a separate step. But the certified products, actually, that's a great, I think they, by rights, they're supposed to be added to the specification page, but I don't know that we're consistent about that. So maybe this is a problem with Jakarta as well.
okay.
In any case, I'm not trying to keep a bunch of work on anybody. I'm just trying to figure out what we want.
Okay.
So I made some notes in them here. I don't know if anybody wants to.
I think this is kind of, we can discuss this further on the marketing call, because the website is maintained by marketing teams. And mainly it's Ryan.
Yeah, you know, one of the things I was thinking about is the reason I brought up technical call is, you know, is each spec team maybe responsible for updating the website? And then it's like I started thinking about it. It's like, do we really want to have to train, right, all these people that are already pretty busy on how to, you know, go into sorry, my mind blank. WordPress, thank you. To, you know, to update pages, probably not, right? So yeah, let's talk about it on the marketing call. Ed, this is a very good question. I would say it's kind of a gap in our process. So let's bring it up in the next call. And we have the marketing call, you know, in 2 weeks on the Monday. So we'll bring it up there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm trying to give myself this AI here. Okay. 7.1. So Emily and I have created the release record for 7.1, and we have also created a plan review for, sorry, I don't know why I'm having a problem here, for 7.1 as well. So that's also been done for OpenAPI and telemetry. I was chatting with Martin briefly. He's created the release record. We have a question about that in just a second. The plan review he said he was going to work on shortly. But one of the things about the release record is that there's a desire to bump the JDK version from 8 to 11 in MicroProfile Health, which in our call yesterday, where Emily and I were just trying to get some of this stuff done, so we kind of did it on a call together. The topic came up is that a breaking change, right? Changing the minimum JDK version. So I think Martin, you were bringing up that this may have been discussed before, and at the time it was not necessarily considered a breaking change, but Emily, I think you felt it was more of a breaking change. So I'd just like to kind of nail this part down to figure out what to do with MicroProfile Health in 7.1. So Martin, you want to go first?
Well, if I remember correctly, we talked about this a lot, and we decided that we can do only minor because we have no reason to do major. So if you say it's going to need to be a major, then I'm not going to do a release at all.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's there's two things with this change. One is the kind of, we said clearly our rule is compile low, support high. Unless you have business need, and you said you use Java 11, for particular API, you are not allowed to do that. This kind of just for no apparent reasons. So that's that being said, kind of loud and clear in the community course multiple times. This is one thing. The other thing is the kind of change the version. So basically, if you stop supporting Java 8, that's a break a change. We have that version guideline kind of in the wiki. I think it's for the increase the minimum version and also the Jakarta, change the Jakarta level as well. That's all considered breaking change.
So again, I'm not going to argue whether we should or not consider it a breaking change. If we are not going to update MicroProfile parent, which currently is based on JDK 11, because MicroProfile is based now on JDK 11, then there is no need to do the release at all. We are just doing it so we can actually fix the CVEs that you are talking about, at least Jan is, mostly.
Okay. Okay, you are going to remove that line then?
No, I think it was what he's saying is
Not to do the release at all.
right.
Because
Right.
there is no functional need to do health release. We were really just going to do it because of the CVEs, the pipeline issues. So basically to bump MicroProfile parent. And if I will be bumping MicroProfile parent to 2.x, if I remember correctly, which is still on JDK 8, then I don't really think it's worth it because the CVEs are still there. So if we are not going to bump to the latest MicroProfile parent, which is on JDK 11, then it doesn't make sense to do the release.
Yeah, so in that case, you probably need to do a 5. Anyway, I posted the link to our John. If you click on the link, I put on the chat. So in our guidelines, we said change the GDK version into major release.
Well, aren't the CVEs actually related with JUnit or TestNG?
I believe so, but I don't know on top of my head.
Because I remember we had that discussion because Jan was like saying that we should fix the CVEs and I mean and there was a couple of other CVEs that were related with the what's that plugin to generate the ASCII doc? I don't know. But the point is the CVEs, as far as I remember, they do not affect the API at all, because there were CVEs that are on test dependencies around TestNG, and the other ones were around Maven plugins. So those do not affect the API.
So I did pull up the spec versioning, and it does say dropping support for Java SE version, which I've highlighted, is a major version change. In what you mentioned, Roberto, makes sense outside of that, right? It's if there's no API change, then there's really nothing breaking. But we've kind of outlined a policy here about dropping a Java SE version as a major change.
No,
What I don't know
that's
is
fine. What I'm trying to say here is there has been like I know that Jan has been pushing heavily to fix those CVEs, but my arguing is those CVEs do not affect the end consumer, because those CVEs do not affect the API jar at all, right? So there are CVEs that are on TestNG, so the API jar has no dependency on test dependencies, which is the one that users consume. And the other CVEs are on Maven plugins that do not affect as well the API jar that users consume. That's the point, right? So I will be concerned if there was like a CVE on the API jar, because that's what users consume. but the CVEs they are not on the API jar at all. So they are on test dependencies, and they are on the doc generation dependencies, not on the API jar.
So I do understand your point. I guess my question is, are you advocating for something specifically on major
Well, what
versus
I'm
minor version, or-
advocating, what I'm advocating is there is no rush in fixing those, right? So if there is an issue about doing a release because parent already went beyond what the CVEs fix are, I think there's not really a big deal if there is no release about it at this point.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree. Also the health is not only spec like on parent 2.x. There's other spec on the 2.x as well. So I would just leave it for this release, and then just I know Martin, you also working on some issues that the API changes as well, right, Martin?
No, there is no breaking change.
Oh,
There is literally we are adding some features just to actually justify even minor release. So I'm totally okay with not doing it at all.
okay. So maybe it's a wait for the MP8 to basically.
That's what it sounded
Again,
like. So that means
Not
sorry,
not
Martin.
really, because if we are going to do a major release just because of the sake of bumping GDK, that doesn't make sense.
Oh
If
no,
we
no. What
don't
we're
have
saying
a
is,
feature, if we don't have a feature that requires a breaking change, then I don't think that we need to bump that minimum GDK version at all.
yeah, I think that was Emily's point. When MicroProfile 8 comes around, then we can add MicroProfile 4.1 back in.
Yeah, that's
Actually, or MicroProfile 5 because it has the
5. MicroProfile health file 5.
Yes, MicroProfile Health 5. Thank you. So
Yeah.
what we'll do is we'll update the release record and the release plan and remove MicroProfile Health, and we'll kind of keep it on the back burner until we have a major release. Okay.
Yeah, sounds
So
good.
let me take a note on that here. Sorry, I already type it out. Okay, everything else then looks okay. So this is something I can go do after the call. So I'll remove it from the release record and I'll remove it from MicroProfile 7.1.
Yeah, sounds good. In that case, John,
Mhm.
I will start the plan review for OpenAPI and telemetry tomorrow morning, and then you do update and you will start MicroProfile 7.1 tomorrow. Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
Okay. Let's. Yeah, I think. Can you post something to the Google group just for people that weren't able to attend, just saying, hey, we're going to start the release review with. No, I'll do that because I want to make sure I update the release records and everything first, just for the people that didn't attend the call, so just so they aren't caught off guard on a release.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, ballot. Really few ballot. All right, schedule. So we are actually doing okay.
Yeah.
So according to the schedule. Okay. So yeah, by the 25th. So yeah, we could start that tomorrow. All right. I think we're actually on time. Oh my gosh. Let's see. Compatible implementations. What's the status? This was discussed briefly on the platform call, right? The core TCK. I think, was it Scott Stark was gonna, or am I thinking of the wrong discussion in the
Yes.
platform call today? I thought it was Scott
So
Stark was gonna look at that. Go ahead, Emily.
yeah, so this is good news. So Scott Stark has done similar thing for EE11. So I asked him to do the EE10 core profile, and he said he will get done this week. So Roberto, I asked whether Scott need your help. Roberto Scott said no. So yeah, it's like let's see. It's better I know this week. Hopefully we will get that done.
All right. So that's good. Emily, I don't know if you wanted to talk at all about, sorry, I'm gonna move on to the next topic. Standalone specifications.
Yeah, so Ryan and so basically eventually I asked the GraphQL team to provide the infra, and eventually nobody did. And I went ahead to produce all the kind of the links and etc. So that page I worked with Ryan, so have that GraphQL page and also React messaging page created. Let me see what, yeah, it's live already. If you click a graph, go to the microprofile.io specification, John, and then GraphQL.
That's where I was just there. I thought.
If you scroll down to the bottom to see whether this page is being updated, I forgot about this page. Go.
No, this page is not.
Yeah, this
updated.
page needs to be updated. Okay,
Okay.
go to the specifications. Yeah, here. So it's all the info here. Also is the kind of, this is really kind of any specification, because this is standalone spec, any impulse supported GraphQL, any particular version, like for the 2.0, you need to file kind of the CCR independently, because it's not included in the umbrella in the MicroProfile release, so that the implementation can be included. So this is GraphQL. If you click on the React messaging, John, if you go to the top again, click on React messaging. So here, similarly, yeah, so for this one, I know Liberty filed a certification CCR. I will basically, I need to create an issue and to have Open Liberty version included on this page. So basically, this is the call to actions. If you support this independent specs and etc., you want kind of have your runtime listed, file a separate CCR on this
Yeah.
particular, basically the specification.
You know, let's work on the. This is part of the process discussion that we'll have with Ryan during the marketing call. But I'm gonna say.
Yeah, because
pages.
Peloton certifies for that too.
Yeah, you just
Yeah,
need
as
to
does Quarkus.
get a CC, create a
I'm sure
CCR.
many people do.
Yeah, and then create a marketing issue, and then Ryan will get that included.
What I'm gonna do is just a reminder, Emily. That's what I am going to do. Hey, how come I
Yeah. It needs to be updated to include the standalone specs.
What email do you want to use?
EMI.
Oh, EMI. Sorry,
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe it was your IBM one. Okay, there we go. Okay. The next one, I'm gonna move on to the next topic if that's okay. Thanks for the update, Emily, and thanks for doing the work.
Thank you.
So my brief summary of where we're at with MicroProfile AI is I think everyone is okay with it moving over to LangChain4j as a Git repo under the LangChain4j organization. The question is the naming, which is still a bit of a controversial topic. You know, is it LangChain4j dash MicroProfile dash MicroProfile dash Jakarta or dash Jakarta dash MicroProfile? That part of the discussion is continues, but I think the idea of it moving seems to have consensus. So Emily, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so basically there's options, basically as John has said, but eventually people think it makes more sense to mention both MicroProfile and Jakarta. However, couldn't settle on the like sequence, whether it's the MicroProfile dash Jakarta or Jakarta dash MicroProfile. And then we discussed on the call, this Monday's call, and then we agreed need to send to the Google group for a vote with the with the MicroProfile committers and etc. I have sent an email to the Google group for people to vote. So everyone is welcome to vote, but the committer will have a binding vote. So, and one thing is also the other concern whether it's okay to use the MicroProfile Jakarta like part of the repo name. So is there any kind of copyright or kind of any other issues? I double checked with Eclipse Foundation EMO. Win said it's fine to use the name, the part of the repo name. And it said basically it's kind of need to say this is a copy, basically have a trademark under Eclipse Foundation. I put that sentence in the mailing list, in the Google group mailing list. So please go and express your opinion about this. So John, do you want to say anything about sequence or names or something like that?
Nah, well, like I mentioned, it's, you know, is it MicroProfile Jakarta or is it Jakarta MicroProfile? And I think even someone, Jan here, brought up this is not Jan, our Jan. It's a different Jan spelled differently. So LangChain4j dash MicroProfile, and just leave it at that, right? So that's a third option that we didn't really discuss. You can see we don't have to go over it here necessarily, but this is my perspective. I would say, you know, respond on the Google group and vote there. Sorry, I thought I had that up in a different. Let me go back. Here we go. This is the issue. In fact, I'm going to take this as a copy and say vote read on repo name created here. There we go. Okay. MicroProfile config was again discussed on the platform call. Emily, you want to give an update on that?
Yeah, so basically this is a older conversation based on the fork or kind of the whether mentioned by reference. So basically my vote and also IBM strongly vote for Jakarta to use MicroProfile directly without creating two configs. So, and then we further discussed how and etc. And I think it's kind of the feasible plan is basically divide a MicroProfile config into a core, and the other one is the kind of CDI part. So move the SPI, the MicroProfile config core, basically to be referred by Jakarta core profile. And then the kind of this is the easiest, and then is kind of there's no duplication, no competition. So this is the kind of I think this is a straightforward way to get it kind of used, get a config used, exposed to Jakarta. So this is the kind of the discussion. And I said basically I'm waiting to help out if need to MicroProfile config to do anything with any kind of particular TCK requirement by Jakarta. So we also further discussed whether the signature test is required by Jakarta, kind of the process. And Ryan brought up there's in the process, there's no mention the signature test is a requirement for according to the TCK process. But anyway, MicroProfile doesn't have this such a thing for the signature test.
All right, and
So there
I
was
think it
some,
comes. Go ahead, Ed.
there was some discussion about dividing config into, to try and, splitting it up to try and, help alleviate some of the circular dependencies. I'm kind of curious if that's what we think of that.
Yeah, so this is basically what I said. Divide the MicroProfile config into two parts. One is the core part. So this core part has no dependency on any Jakarta kind of spec. So that would be a SPI. The other part is basically the CDI, kind of the integration. So
So do we as MicroProfile think that's a good idea?
yes, I think it's a good idea. I think Roberto already raised the issue. And then if Jakarta wants to go with this approach, I'm willing to help. I'm sure Roberto is also, I
No,
don't
I
know.
mean, it is one of the shortcomings, in my opinion, of the microprofile spec, right? Because it forces you to have CDI. So, for instance, in our small right config implementation, we did some changes to be able to have an implementation without having the CDI pieces, especially because you want to use configuration in any place, right? And not only when you have a CDI environment. And most of all, you want to be able to access config outside CDI beans, right? Because not everything is a CDI bean, right? And there's plenty of pieces that you want to configure on an application that are not related with CDI. So in my opinion, for a long time that I've been advocating to have CDI, to have a config specification that's completely standalone and does not depend on anything, not even CDI. So if we want to have CDI integration, that's fine. That can be done on top, but the spec itself should not have a dependency on anything. So because that will allow the specification to actually to be used by anyone that wants to use it. Actually, my vision is that the config specification can be used outside Jakarta or outside MicroProfile as a complete standalone spec to configure any kind of Java application, right?
Yeah, so sorry. Yeah, I think it's the way config is where it's at is because MicroProfile was always considered CDI first. And you know, it's where we are today. The question is, and maybe this is for the technical call, but to me, it sounds like we need to discuss, I think we're all okay with that. It already kind of exists, right, with the programmatic API and the injection, right, the CDI version portion of the spec. Do we have two separate specs? Is it two parts of the same spec? Like so I think some other specs, right, have had that as well. Like the platform spec, right, had web profile as a sub portion of the platform spec. So have we thought about that at all? I mean, two separate specs or two parts of a same spec? And would that satisfy Jakarta's concern?
I believe to have it as a two-part spec will be fine. They don't need to be two separate pieces, even though one of my suggestions was to actually to make it part of CDI itself.
Yeah, I don't think the CDI will want to get any particular integration in. I also think two parts are fine. The fundamental bit is kind of we always deliver two jars. So it's one is for core, one is for the kind of CDI first approach. And then also the TCK, we clearly identify kind of the core TCK and also the CDI integration TCK. Be fine.
Well, I mean, my idea of having CDI to actually adopt that is because it will make things way more clear. Even if you split the spec into two into MicroProfile, you will break the direct cycle of dependencies, but still is going to create like a complicated graph of just, let's just say CDI, and I guess that's one of the goals for CDI to use config to configure itself, right? So it will mean you will have config, you'll have CDI depend on config core, and then you'll have whatever we call the second part of the spec of the config with CDI depend on CDI, right? So yes, it will work. It will just make like this train of dependencies that could be more easily solved. It will just say, well, CDI adopts config, and now config works this way, and for that being, it means that anyone that uses CDI will also have the exact same config behavior. Which makes it for me a more clear approach.
I disagree. I don't think a CDI should have anywhere go to the integration part. Also, the way.
Well, I mean, but if
Sorry,
CDI will if CDI, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but the point is, if CDI depends on config because they want to use config to configure itself, then it makes perfect sense to also define that behavior and how config will behave in a CDI environment. Now, if you tell me, okay, CDI does not want to use config at all, well, then I agree. But I think that's not the case, right?
The CDI need config. CDI needs to config itself. It's not like a CDI need a config to do the injection. And the other thing is this is pretty much like the integration. Now CDI push the resource injection to the individual specs. CDI want to have no dependency on anybody else. So I don't think like a CDI.
No, but you just
Sorry,
said you're going to
Roberto,
have a
can I
dependency on config.
I think you keep on cutting me off. So basically what I'm saying, like a config the core SPI bay has no dependency, and then CDI can directly use that to configure it itself. For the integration with the CDI and the config, you can directly kind of live in the config CDI integration. I will say the MicroProfile config has the core SPI and also the CDI integration, and then stay that way.
Yeah, I mean, if CDI has a dependency on config, for me, it doesn't make any sense to have like a third option where you have something completely separate, where you have to set up how config and CDI work together, because CDI will already have the config APIs that are part of the core SPI, right? So users can use that directly once they have on a CDI environment, even if they're not using it on a CDI beam. So it will be a little strange that if you're missing the CDI config integration part, then you're not able to use it, right? I mean, you also have to realize that we are on a new ground here, because at this point, I understand when you're saying that CDI defines how injection works and push that to other specifications. But until now, CDI never had a dependency on any other specification. And that's the new part here.
As I mentioned, I think the config CDI, if CDI want to use the config, is use the config to configure itself. So that's kind of more interesting in the SPI. So it's for the kind of the anything working together and etc. I think it's better off all the integration come with the integration parts. Adding anything to CDI, I think is that will be another lengthy conversation. I cannot see the end of this. So this is my another concern. So I will advocate for now, concentrate basically they define config into two parts. One is the kind of core parts, the other one is the CDI integration. So how to use basically when CDI is present, you can do config this way. So with this, is kind of is more feasible and to have the core part to be in the Jakarta core profile, and then is kind of things will evolve and eventually I think making progress. If you're saying rehome some other piece, that's kind of back to the drawing board again.
Just a time check here. We got about 4 minutes left, and I mean, we can end on this conversation. That's okay. Just letting everyone know.
The other thing is the tutorial. I don't think that's been. I think we need to making more progress with the tutorial, PRs.
Yeah, I was actually going through the JWT one a little bit today, and I saw he hasn't gotten the summary part submitted yet, and those are the last two things on his list.
Okay, so I need to double check whether I think maybe he has addressed my comment, but I haven't got a chance to re-review. But it's kind of everybody here, if you have any kind of time, please take a look at the PR for the tutorial and also follow it and try it out. I think it's good to have that the PRs merged sooner rather than later.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, I think with that, I'm gonna close out the call. Thanks everyone for joining. And next week is the technical call and the live hangout in 2 weeks, same bat time, same bat channel. So thanks everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Nice.